2 as the principle of life to the concept of your individual soul. How are they connected? Remember, I don't have the right answer for that, so anything you feel like saying about that is a great answer, right? So with Plato, we see that the soul is somehow abstract. Remember, it's separate, from matter. With Aristotle, everything is matter, and so the soul is the activity of the body. So with Plato, the good is something that everything is structured by the good. All these ideas somehow are in an abstract system that is based on the good starting it all, right? That fits really beautifully with the Christian concept of God, or the Jewish concept of God as the originator of everything. Light is interesting how that plays into all of this. But for Plato, there's only one true good. So all good, is like the sun. Sun is a metaphor, but the sun literally shines on everything and makes everything, whatever good is in it, comes from the light of the sun, in a sense. So that's Plato's thought. But when we look at Aristotle, that was supposed to be the other book. I wanted to get back to Nicomachean Ethics, book 1. So immediately he's going to critique the concept of the good, the Platonic good. Remember, the ideas don't exist as far as he's concerned, and yet we say good. We use the word good for all kinds of things. Well, that's it. We use it for all kinds of things. This is good pizza. This is a good university. Best in Alaska. Sorry, Fairbanks. It's just my opinion, right? There's lots of different kinds of good. For Plato, in the dialogues concerning it, they try to figure out, well, what do all these things that we call good have in common? Because what we want to do is find the real good. If this is good, there must be something in it that comes from the good. So let's try to figure out what that is, right? That doesn't work. It's very confusing because it seems like there's such a disparity between all the things we call good that they can't really all be associated with one common good. Well, what Aristotle points out is we have all kinds of goods. Everything that we do aims at something, some specialty. Sight, you're trying to make sure your eyes are working well, good child care, that's, don't drink wine, good education, good horsemanship, there's all these different things that we do, and we use the word good for all of these things. And basically, he's going to point out that, there's no such thing as the good. There's just all these different kinds of goods. Isn't that, properly speaking, really exactly what we mean by good? We have goods of all sorts. Yes, we get into conflicts. Some people think this is good. This person, well, I don't want to get into abortion, but sure, why not? Some people think abortion is a good solution to a miserable situation, and other people today are absolutely convinced that that's murder, right? It has quite a history. I remember discovering that when Aquinas, Middle Ages, 1200 AD, and Aristotelian, because Aristotle's philosophy had come back, and so you had a sudden issue in the church over whether or not abortions were okay. And Aquinas' answer, based on Aristotle, was that the fetus is ensouled at roughly 3 months. Why? None of you have had children?
Heartbeat?
Heartbeat? I don't think they could tell that, maybe. But it kicked. About 3 months is when the thing starts bothering you, right? It's moving. It's in soul, because now it has activity. And remember, for Aristotle, the soul is the activity of the body. So, voila, which is French for so there, right? You know, you've got, it's now got a soul, right? So it was roughly 3 months. So for the church, around that time, up to that point, yeah, sure, abortion, fine. But after that, no, it's got a soul now, right? The church changed its mind as science developed to the point where they realized, well, wait a minute, you've actually got a unique individual at, what's it called, when the ova and the conception, okay? Wow, that's a person now. In fact, the church went overboard, maybe, and said you can't even prevent this from happening. That's even a sin, right? Because their goal, I think, as I understand it, is to highlight how significant human beings are. And by saying that humans are so significant, you don't want to put anything in the way of creating new humans, basically, right? That's before you get people like Thomas Malthus that point out that there's too damn many of us. We're destroying the place. We're going to eat up all the food, and then we're going to kill one another and eat up one another until we have few enough that now we can live together again. Till the next time that we need to do that. Thomas Malthus. I don't know if you're aware of him at all. Those kinds of things. By the way, Malthus was a Reverend Thomas Malthus. So, kind of alarming that the British especially believed in his philosophy at the time that the Irish were starving. They said, well, it's just God, so let them starve. That's just true. That's what they said. They had food. They could actually have fed them. But instead they were harvesting the food and selling it to make money while the Irish were dying of the potato famine. Right? Yes. Or coming to the U.S., probably when my family got here, at least some of them. However. So, how did I get onto that? The fetus. But every art has a good. We might argue over what is the good thing, but basically we're in agreement that there's a multiplicity of goods, and they don't all hark back to a particular one good thing, right? How do you end up becoming ethical? And for the Greeks, the word ethic meant character. So what they were talking about in ethics, as opposed to morality, which is a German-based word, it comes much later. Well, actually, it's probably Latin, moralia, I suppose. But the difference is that with ethics, you're focused on your own flourishing, right? Your own flourishing. And one of my contemporary authors that I especially like on flourishing and this ties in to the argument I used, I think, in the first or second class, that we need a narrative. You don't want to end up like Avril Lavigne, on a stormy night, with no one, isn't anyone coming to find me? Isn't anyone going to take me home? Yeah. sorry, I don't have any talent. But the narrative, what's your narrative? Depending on your narrative, that's why I get up in the morning, I have a goal, I want to introduce more. I'm introducing stuff like this to you guys where I'm assuming you've never heard any of this stuff, is just absolutely exhilarating. Because it's important. You need to know this stuff. Where did this all come from? And how can we get on top of it, basically? How can we understand where we're coming from and why we have the problems we do and how we might be able to solve them and so on, right? Flourishing is based on our narrative, and our narrative, if we do comparative narratology and try to figure out what are the best narratives, and remember Joseph Campbell's, monomyth, the hero's journey, that seems to be our favorite narrative outline, basically. At the same time, it seems like the traditional narratives, at least, if not almost all of them, really are part of an institution of a religion of some sort, right? So when we think about what is religion, that's a good question. What is religion? We use the word all the time. You thought about what it might mean?
Belief in something?
Yes, I'm right there with you on that. It's been a fascinating topic. I have it on the what is religion? Sorry, the page is so screwed up here. So, what is religion? My answer to that is belief in a meta-narrative. We have stories, right? Yes? Do you have a question?
There it is.
There it is, yeah. Belief in something, but in this case, a narrative. This is how I'll live my life. You get desperate when you don't have one. Yes?
Maybe this is because I'm not understanding what exactly the word meta-narrative means, but doesn't it need to be some type of structured narrative? Because, if you have your own personal belief system that you've concluded, that's based on thinking about it, and this is your personal beliefs, spiritual beliefs, but it's not, nobody else has that exact belief system that you have. Isn't that not religion? Because that's just your belief.
Yeah, it's a good problem because, theoretically, if you just have your own, I won't say idiotic, but I mean id is yourself, so it's specific to you and not shared with other people. How can you be sure that you're following it unless you've got an interaction with someone else that corrects you when you make a mistake? How do we know that we're using words correctly unless people look at us like, what? We get a dialect. We're social. Our knowledge is really a social internet, etc. And the narrative is going to be the same thing. So you tend to want to belong to a group of people that share the narrative that's important to you. And meta narrative was long before we had a company named Meta. It just means the big one. So you've got lots of narratives that you use every day. How to get to Old Seward. In a sense, I'm following a narrative that when I get there, I got to go this way, this way, this way. But I have a big narrative that is the big picture that I'm always negotiating all these littler narratives in and trying to use. What's more important? Taking my daughter to this, or showing up at this, or I have to make judgments, and those I'm going to reconcile through the bigger narrative that tells me here's my priorities. So I'll have to stop here unless you have questions. I'm going upstairs for a while. If anyone wants to go up and continue this, but, this is a relatively long page because,
That's a big question.
yeah, I put lots of stuff into it, so,
Can I take this home, read it, and go back on Tuesday?
if you like.
Oh, thank you.
Just don't get in trouble, because remember, I stole it from the army, so.
So lately I've been reading Dune, obviously. And one part that was similar to what we discussed today